Good morning. Please stand. We're going to sing number 177, Sakura. Mara's going to play through it once if you don't know it. It's about the cherry blossoms.
Good morning. Welcome everyone to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where we join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or as we like to say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Also like to begin each of our services by welcoming all that you bring with you, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, your differences, many of the things that maybe aren't so welcome in some of the other churches out there. So we're glad to welcome all of you, your whole self, into this space, whether you are joining us for the first time or a regular attendee, or if you're live streaming with us this morning, it's also great to have all of you. So thanks to everyone for being here. One announcement today, Pride Weekend is coming up in June, and we are going to need volunteers to help staff our Pride booth. So if that's something that you'd be interested in helping with for an hour or so, there's a sign-up sheet at the table. Is it back there, Tom? Okay, good. All right, at the end of the table with the flag, you can just sign up, and someone from our Social Justice Coordinating Council will get a hold of you. And also, we're looking for photographs. If any of you have been down there in the past and taken photos of some of our involvement down there to display at our table, that would be wonderful. Okay, so that is all I have for now. Let's take a couple of extra minutes this morning to greet one another. Some of you are sitting down on your own, so I figured I better ring the gong. It's a boring crowd today. Just kidding. As always, you get to visit more during our social hour following the service and grab a cup of coffee or tea, and I think there's probably even some bread and cookies left back there. But for now, let's move forward by lighting our chalice. The chalice is the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
The opening words are from Chief Joseph, whose name in Nez Perce means thunder traveling to higher areas. Let me be a free man, free to travel, free to stop, free to work, free to trade where I choose, free to choose my own teachers, free to follow the religion of my fathers, free to talk, think, and act for myself, and I will obey every law or submit to the penalty.
Please stand, join me for number 97, Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home, a long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. A long way from home. A long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. A long way from home. A long way from home.
We sang that song at the early service, and I just ended up being really caught up in it. The thought that kept coming to my mind is we're on a planet of more than 8 billion people right now, and there are people on it who feel homeless and alone. How is that possible? And I think it's possible because too many of us are putting up walls and barricades and borders and conditions that keep us apart as one common human family. So that's a sad song to me, but an important one. It's a good song leading into our Candles of Care, where we've been for far too long now mentioning the people of Ukraine and that region of the world, and Israel and the Palestinian people, all who are being treated by some like they don't belong on this earth. We're all, I think it was Chief Seattle who said, all people are children of one mother, the earth, and deserve equal rights upon it. And these words were beautiful too, by Chief Joseph. Let me be a free man, free to travel, free to stop, free to work, free to trade where I choose, free to choose my own teachers, free to follow the religion of my fathers, free to talk, think, and act for myself. That's what everybody who walks on this earth should be able to do. All right, I wasn't going to do that again this service, but I did it anyway. So let's take a moment of silence on behalf of those you might be thinking of, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud if you like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we do have a special collection this morning. You'll find a special collection envelope in your order of service. This special collection will go to Meals on Wheels, which, as our order of service says, is really a lifeline to a lot of seniors who might otherwise go hungry, but also an opportunity to have connections with others who are delivering those meals. And thanks to everybody who are in our church who are part of that program and delivering those meals to people every week. So please do use the special collection envelope if this is something you want to contribute to. You don't have to seal it. We'll know what it's for. And if you're live streaming with us, you're welcome to go online. We'd appreciate it, and make a donation as well. So thank you in advance for your generosity. We now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world.
Midnight moon and broken branches, counting my steps and taking those chances on love. And taking those chances on love again. Desert sunsets woven endless beaches, dropping my guard and taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love again. Taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love again. Holiday hearts and songs unsung, treading softly, going out, taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love again. those chances on love. Taking those chances on love. More to come, lessons to learn. My soul's reborn and I'm taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love again and again and again and again.
I would love to invite all of the children up for our time for all ages. I have a story about someone who took a second chance. The story is called John Murray and the Winds of Change, and I've adapted it from a UUA RE lesson. Hi, everyone. Where's my son? Has Max left the building? We'll find him. Okay. You never know which way the wind blows or what the wind might blow in. The wind can change directions and maybe change your life. That happened to John Murray. As a young man, John Murray had an excellent fortune blow his way. He had a fine education, a steady job, a loving wife, and a young son. Life was good. And then, suddenly, everything changed. John Murray's wife and their son got sick, and they both died. John lost his job, lost all his money, and was put in jail because he couldn't pay his bills. John was a very religious man, a Universalist, who had even preached about a loving God. And now, he felt like his life was over. Friends encouraged him to go someplace where he could start again. So he sailed for America in a ship named the Hand in Hand. Do you think that's a funny name for a ship? Yeah, I see those faces. I kind of thought so too. Well, the wind blew the Hand in Hand toward their destination of New York. But dense, soupy fog rolled in and the ship ran aground in New Jersey instead. John and a few other brave people volunteered to leave the ship, go on land, and figure out how to get to New York. As John Murray stepped onto the unfamiliar shores of New Jersey, he couldn't help but feel a mix of apprehension and hope swirling within him, like the mist that enveloped the coastline. The Hand in Hand had veered off course, but perhaps fate had something else in store for him on this unexpected detour. As he trudged through the fog, his mind heavy with the weight of his recent losses, he stumbled upon a humble farmhouse nestled among the rolling hills. The sight of smoke curling from the chimney and the warm candlelight in the window offered a glimmer of peace in the midst of uncertainty. Who might he meet on this encounter? You'll have to find out in Children's Chapel. And adults, you might just need to Google. Again, the name was John Murray. Join me in singing the children out to Children's Chapel.
Go now in peace.
For the meditation this morning, words from Vera Nazarian. Listen to the trees as they sway in the wind. Their leaves are telling secrets. Their bark sings songs of olden days as it grows around the trunks, and their roots give names to all things. Their language has been lost, but not the gestures.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. Whoa, this land was made for you and me. Whoa, as I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. Whoa, this land was made for you and me. You know, I've roamed and I've rambled, I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts, and all around me, you know, a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. And when that sun came shining, whoa, as I was strolling, and the wheat fields waving, and the dust clouds rolling, as the fog was lifting, you know, a voice was chanting. This land was made for you and me. Give Madeline a hand. As I went walking, you know, I saw a sign there on the sign that said no trespassing, but on the other side, you know that it said nothing. that side was made for you and me. In the squares of the city, in the shadow of a steeple, by the welfare office, I saw my people. They stood there hungry, and I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me? Well, nobody living can't ever stop me as I go walking that freedom highway. Nobody living can make me turn back, 'cause this land was made for you and me. Whoa, this land was made for you and me.
Well, I was supposed to get up and give a fiery sermon, and now I'm totally chill. Wow, thank you so much. That just so beautifully sung, and you know the way you sing that song, I think help all of us appreciate the lyrics, maybe in ways we haven't been able to do for a while. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Woody Guthrie was a great advocate for victims of the Dust Bowl, and for folks who know our history. If you don't, read John Steinbeck's book, The Grapes of Wrath, but the history of people trying to migrate west to find work and livelihoods, and the confrontations that they faced, often from the authorities. Right? We actually had to create an amendment that made it legal for Americans to go anywhere in the country. And when you hear Woody saying those words, right, that nothing can stop me on that freedom highway. This land was made for you and me. That's what he was singing about, you know, people putting up walls and borders and boundaries to keep us from walking this earth like a motherless child, looking for home. So it's just beautiful the way this service has worked out. So. But anyway, God grant me some hellfire and brimstone. I need it. So I should explain the title here. I just assumed you would take it, you would understand. I took it for granted you'd understand it. But Steve Hassan, who is a leading cult expert, I shared this with him during some correspondences this week that I'd be speaking about this, and he very politely wrote me back and said, actually, it's spelled with 2 O's, you know, so. I said, oh, you didn't get my pun. Us UUs like to kind of substitute UU. So I'm not speaking about the Muunies, not really. I'm speaking about cultish ideas of mind control, and I thought it'd be fun to put Muunies with, you got it? Did anybody not get it? Who dares raise your hand? Good. Everybody gets it. Okay. So when I was 18 years old, way back in 1982, never thought I'd say that, I happened to be in New York City at the same time that Sung Myung Moon, founder and leader of the Muunies, otherwise known as the Unification Church, conducted a mass wedding that involved 2,000 couples. Now, the unusual event is memorable to me because it made national news, and I happened to be there at the same time that it did. But this wasn't the first, last, or even the largest such event. Just last year, the Unification Church united 8,000 couples. That's 16 individuals from 150 countries into holy matrimony during one service. The Muunies have conducted such ceremonies fairly frequently since their first, which was in 1961, about 7 years after Moon founded the group, usually involving, again, somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 couples. A lot of people over the years to go about getting married this way. And even as a younger teenager in the early 80s, my brother and I befriended a couple who ran a local health food store in Pacifica, California, near the beach where we hung out. They were Muunies and ran the shop on behalf of its owner, the Unification Church, which has lots of businesses around. They were completely open about their religion, their devotion and reverence for Moon, whom they believed was the second coming of Christ, about the business being a source of revenue for the church, and about having met the day they were married in 1974 during one of Moon's mass weddings. Moon walked about pointing his fingers randomly at a man and then at a woman, indicating that they were to be married. And they were certain that when he looked at them, that he had looked deeply into their souls and knew that they were meant for each other. As far as I could tell, they got along well. They truly loved each other, and by then they even had a little girl that they adored. Yet even as an impressionable teenager whose beliefs as a Southern Baptist were no less nutty, I knew that their marriage could have been nothing more than the result of chance, due to the random finger-pointing of a man who could not have looked deeply into their souls and likely did not even care the least about their humanity or their individual dignity. Today, in his provocative and courageous book, The Cult of Trump, psychologist and mind control expert Steve Hassan, who was himself once part of Moon's cult, considers Sun Myung Moon to have been a malignant narcissist, along with other cult leaders like L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology, please don't sue me, Jim Jones of the People's Temple, David Koresh of the Branch Davidians, Warren Jeffs, the Fundamentalist Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints, and Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh from the Rajneesh movement, and Keith Rainier from NXIVM. They all fit a similar pattern, Hassan says. Grandiose, arrogant, bombastic, supremely confident, demanding of attention and admiration, rarely admitting a mistake. They were known to lie, cheat, and steal without apparent conscience and empathy. Again, you can find that in The Cult of Trump. Wonder what the relevance is there. So I was surprised in reading Hassan's book to learn that one of my favorite thinkers, social psychologist Erich Fromm, coined this term, malignant narcissism, to describe what he thought was the most severe mental sickness, one that represented the quintessence of evil, mostly because of the lack of empathy and morality on the part of the patient. Anyone who knows Fromm's work, which of course you should because I speak about him frequently, understands why he would consider this the worst of evils, because it is the opposite of his humanistic ethic, which he considers the greatest good. This is why he concludes that the sole criterion of ethical value ought to be human welfare, and that the unfolding and growth of every person ought to be the aim of all our social and political activities. That's what we are to be about. Human welfare and individual unfolding. That is the quintessence of good. So when an institution or individual gains the kind of control over the minds and the wills that Moon's mass weddings demonstrate, which denies others their own individual agency, it is right to consider it the quintessence of evil, and malignant narcissist is a deserving name for the perpetrators of such evil. Tragically, the desire to control others so completely is itself a sign of a stunted personality, of an individual who is nowhere close to fully unfolding as a human being. Because we can't be human if we don't have empathy. As Fromm also says, the whole meaning of life is to develop into the individual that one potentially is. The duty to be alive is the same as the duty to become oneself. To do so, to fully develop our human potential, is to fully realize what he considers our greatest human power. Our greatest human power, the ability to love. But love is an activity, he says, not a passive affect. Love is not a feeling, it is something that we do. And it is something that we do unto others. Love is something we do unto others. The most fundamental kind of love, which underlies all types of love, Fromm says, is the sense of responsibility, care, respect, knowledge of any other human being, and the wish to further their life. That's what love is. That's what a loving individual is. That's what a loving society is. A society that fulfills or nurtures the lives of others. So how do we know if a person is fully able to love? By how one acts towards others. Does one work to free them or to control them? Envy, jealousy, ambition, any kind of greed are passions, Fromm says. But love is an action, the practice of a human power which can be practiced only in freedom and never the result of a compulsion. But the psychologically and emotionally incomplete person, perhaps a malignant narcissist, if one is not growing at all, does the opposite. The most fundamental anxiety for every person is caused by the innate conflict between freedom and belonging. Each of us longs to connect with others without losing ourselves, and to be ourselves without losing our connection to others. If we can't overcome this tension by fully developing our capacity to love ourselves and others, by working to care, respect, know, and further the life of those we love, including our own, but not at the expense of others, then we may attempt to do so through this false power of control. We connect with and know others while maintaining our own autonomy, that is, by controlling them. That's the sadistic solution. Or by letting them control us, which is the masochistic solution. There is one way, a desperate one, to know the secret, Fromm says. It is that of complete power over another person. That's the solution to this common anxiety, to take power over others. The power which makes him do what we want, feel what we want, think what we want, which transforms him into a thing, our possession. The most confounding and troubling facet of all of this for me is not the malignant narcissist of the world, although they are disturbing enough. And there are plenty of them. but that so many people, thousands, even millions in some cases, are so easily influenced by them, are so masochistic in their existence, so masochistic in their attempt to resolve this basic anxiety. And I became acutely aware of this conundrum during my recent February sabbatical after watching 3 docuseries about various cults. 2 of them were UFO cults, and the third was about a very obviously troubled young woman who claimed to be God. So the beliefs of all 3 of these cults were so obviously ludicrous, right, just by me telling you those brief descriptions, that it was unimaginable that any person, let alone dozens to thousands, could have believed them. And the control of the cult leaders, that the cult leaders held over them, was so complete that in one case, the members all committed mass suicide. Fortunately for me, one of those interviewed about that particular cult was Dr. Steve Hassan, the cult and mind control expert I've already spoken of. And I immediately purchased 2 of his books in search of answers: Combating Mind Control, for which he's most known, and the more recent, The Cult of Trump, both of which I highly recommend. Early in the first of these, Hassan defines mind control as any system of influence that disrupts an individual's authentic identity and replaces it with a false new one. Any system of influence that disrupts an individual's authentic identity and replaces it with a false new one. We see this demonstrated by the couple that I spoke of moments ago who, rather than choosing whom they would marry for themselves, allowed a person that they never met make this monumental decision for them. But being influenced by others isn't necessarily destructive, which is why Hassan explains, I also use the term undue influence. Undue, because these practices violate personal boundaries and human integrity, as well as ethics and often the law. Mind control, again, is any system of influence that disrupts an individual's authentic identity and replaces it with a false new one. I'm reminded of the words spoken by the Ministry of Truth to Winston Smith after his arrest for committing thought crimes in George Orwell's dystopian horror novel, 1984. We shall squeeze you empty, and then we shall fill you with ourselves. We shall squeeze you empty, and then we shall fill you with ourselves. Hassan says the essence of mind control is that it encourages dependence and conformity and discourages autonomy and individuality. Individualism is fiercely discouraged. But the line that most caught my attention in combating mind control is Hassan's assertion that even mainline religious organizations can have destructive aspects, use undue influence, or become destructive cults. Even mainline churches can become destructive cults. Is this what's happened to Unitarian Universalism? Has it fallen under the spell of a mind control cult? Does this explain why so many people that I thought I knew, colleagues I've known for many years, individuals who were once members of this very church, suddenly began behaving in ways that I could never have imagined? Have they lost their autonomy and individuality because of an organization that encourages dependence and conformity? In these groups, Hassan says, Basic respect for the individual is secondary to the leader's whims and ideology. People are manipulated and coerced to think, feel, and behave in a single right way. Individuals become totally dependent on the group and lose the ability to act or think on their own. To figure out if an organization falls under the category of mind control cult, Hassan has developed the BITE model, an acronym for behavioral, information, thought, and emotional control. A mind control group that uses any or all of these to unduly influence, to unethically influence others is suspect, at the very least. Hassan refers to any group in which mind control is used in destructive ways as simply a cult. So if the Unitarian Universalist Association and any of its member congregations are unethically controlling behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions within their organizations and among their members, they, by this definition, are simply a cult. Using the BITE model, I've concluded that this is precisely the case. The UUA uses all of these categories to some extent to unduly influence its members. Controlling the behavior of others in the UUA is difficult, given that Unitarian Universalism is historically rooted in the ideas and ideals of individual freedom, congregational autonomy, and human dignity. That's what we have been about. For the past several years, however, the UUA leadership has been changing this by creating a punitive culture of fear, intolerance, and shame, and by transforming itself from a member service organization into what it euphemistically calls a covenantal religion. At the 2015 UUA General Assembly, for example, then moderator Jim Keyes announced a new task force explaining the task force was charged with changing the culture of the UUA from one of a member service administration to one of mutual covenanting. Keyes also spoke of reshaping how our congregations are governed, elated that, as he said, 8 districts in the South and Central Northeast have voted to dissolve and defer governance to the UUA. Whoopee. Additionally, now it has complete control over ministerial education, certification, and placement, something that belongs to our autonomous congregations. These include ministers who indoctrinate their churches with a new illiberal ideology and who forbid contradicting views from being expressed. And I hear these stories from congregations all over the country these days. You wouldn't believe the things I hear. I could not imagine getting away with what some of these ministers are getting away with. You guys would run me out, hopefully, on a rail. I would deserve it. Imagine if you came and said, we want to do a book study on something. And, oh, well, no, you can't study that book in our church. What would you do to me? It's happening frequently. First of all, I'd never do it. You know why? Because I'm a Unitarian minister. I shouldn't have to explain it any more than that, right? Those ministers who dare protest or resist this shift are increasingly accused of causing harm and being out of covenant. We don't know what that means because they've never said what covenant or when I took it. Between the UU Association's establishment in 1961 and 2020, By the way, our religion's been around a lot longer than 1961, but that's when the association was formed. Between 1961 and 2020, the year that I was disfellowshipped, only 9 ministers had ever been permanently disfellowshipped from ministry, mostly for sexual or financial inappropriate behavior, as it should be. Since 2020, 5 ministers have been disfellowshipped for bullying behavior and creating hostile work environments, which means that they said something the UUA authorities disagreed with. I know this because I was the first to receive this honor. You can go to their UUA's website and see that I'm listed as a non-cooperative bully. Non-cooperative, I'll agree with. You got me. You got me. So speech is now considered then a form of harm and violence. Additionally, in 2020, the UUA began granting ministers full fellowship instead of final fellowship. Sounds like a subtle shift, but final meant that a minister was free of any other certification requirements. Full means that they are never free, that they are bound to certain continuing education requirements as deemed necessary by the UUA throughout their entire careers. As its 2023 document explaining this change states, we seek a different system, one based in relationship, development, and a commitment to lifelong learning. Keep in mind, ministers are not employees of the UUA. If I'm a lifelong learner, but believe me, they're not going to tell me what I should be learning. I could tell you what you should be learning, what you should have learned a long time ago. The same document now defines a minister as someone granted fellowship by the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, the MFC, which is contrary to our age-old tradition of exclusive congregational ordination. It is our congregations that make ministers, going back hundreds of years, not a member service organization. Thank you for that fire. The document also states the UUA will approve only those whose work is theologically grounded, don't know what that means, expressed Unitarian Universalist values and principles, don't know what those are because they're getting rid of the 7 principles, and reflects commitment to anti-oppression, collective liberation, and ongoing learning. So you only get through if they say you get through. And you only get to our churches if they let you get through. That's the rub, guys. That's why our churches are endangered of being infiltrated by this mindset, this illiberal mindset. To be a UU minister these days, you better have learned your lessons. Regarding the control of information, since around 2021, the UU World magazine has completely eliminated, this is just one example, of its letters to the editor section. This section was once 5 to 10 pages long, and issues that came out, monthly, then bi-monthly, then now twice a year, I think. But after my 2019 book, The Gadfly Papers, made many people aware of what's happening, a policy was adopted forbidding my name from being published in the magazine, which necessarily eliminated most of the letters expressing concern. And rather than publishing only positive letters, the magazine simply stopped publishing all letters. The result is that now there is no place for feedback. Honest or otherwise, information is one-directional from the UUA to its members, and that information has become little more than propagandistic. Although the UUA is now claiming that it has always been a covenantal religion, ours is a covenantal religion. No, it's a liberal religion. This false claim reflects a concerted effort to eliminate freedom and individual thought. There's the thought piece. Covenant, by the way, is something that Reverend Frederick Muir says has eluded Unitarian Universalism. A doctrine of church that has eluded Unitarian Universalism until now a doctrine of church. Is mere explicit and individualism. See, if we're going to be a covenantal religion, we have to get rid of our emphasis on individuals. We can't do both. They conflict. As mentioned during the 2016 UUA General Assembly, the moderator, Jim Keyes, as I mentioned, held up one of Muir's books while announcing this new task force, the new task force on recovenanting, charged with changing the culture of the UUA from one of a member service administration to one of mutual covenanting. In 2018, a UUA study action issue was approved stating, "Decentering whiteness calls us to decenter individual dignity." Calls us to decenter individual dignity for our collective liberation. We have no individuality. We will be part of the group. We will be saved as a group, as groupies. Statements like these are enough to prove both the purpose of this term and that it has only been widely used to define Unitarianism in recent years. Right? We have the dates. We have when it was announced in 2015. As Hassan says, in a cult, individualism is fiercely discouraged. In the UUA, the use of logic itself, talk about thought control, is highly discouraged. A 2019 letter condemning me and my book states, affirmed by hundreds of UU ministers, I should say, states, "A zealous commitment to logic and reason over all other forms of knowing is one of the foundational stones of white supremacy culture." So even logic is ad hominem. Just using it makes you a white supremacist. Do not think for yourself. And it says, ideas and language can indeed be forms of violence that cause real harm. And the predictable freedom of speech arguments are commonly weaponized to perpetuate oppression and inflict further harm. Another public letter of condemnation states, "We cannot ignore the fact that logic has often been employed in white supremacy culture to stifle dissent, minimize expressions of harm, and to require those who suffer to prove the harm by the culture's standards. Reason and thinking is out, and church doctrine is in." Finally, the emotional control exhibited by the UUA is enforced by what I said earlier, a growing culture of fear, shame, guilt, and punishment. People fear being called out as racist, homophobic, transphobic, ableist, and so on, and are rewarded for signaling their own virtue, I should say, by calling out others and by joining in the public flogging of dissenters, or at the very least, keeping quiet, which, by the way, can also make one suspect. And we don't have time to go into the new and flawed ideology at the center of UUism today. Suffice it to say that it is itself a racist and segregationist ideology that believes, as Coleman Hughes says in his new book, The End of Race Politics, race matters in a deep and enduring way. Race is central to improving our society. The sharp racial classifications are a necessary part of a just society. That blackness and whiteness encompass far more than the descriptions of skin color and ancestry, and encompass all kinds of stereotypes about thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, habits, and character. It is neo-racism. They call it anti-racism. It is racism. It is racist, and it is segregationist, and it divides the human family rather than bringing us together. It does the very things that activists have fought against for decades in this world by denying our common humanity. At the same time, the emotions of people with identities that have been historically marginalized are treated as if they have some kind of magical emotional supremacy. And that arguing with them is itself racist and harmful. So fear, shame, guilt, and illogic are means of emotional control that have become indicative of UUA culture. And by the way, my issue with the UUA is not this ideology. I don't agree with it, but it's okay for them to have it, for people to have it. My problem is those of us who disagree with it are no longer free to say so. That's the only problem. This is my religion. It's your religion. We should be free to disagree. That's what we're about. That's it in a nutshell. We don't demonize each other when we disagree. Not only are we free to disagree, free to say what we think, but we should be able to expect that's okay. We're not going to lose any friends over it. We're not going to lose our livelihoods over it. And that, you know, in a community where discourse is demonized, I believe that the UUA, by any definition, has become a mind control cult. They are controlling our thoughts, our minds, or attempting to. So what's the takeaway from all this? You should just leave. I mean, that's it. It's over. No. It was nice knowing you, but sayonara. No, to answer this, I want to turn again to the wisdom of Steve Hassan, who, having recovered from a cult himself as a young man, the Muunies again, and after years of helping others do so, he doesn't consider himself a deprogrammer. Right? When you think of a deprogrammer, you probably think of somebody pulling up in a van, snatching somebody and taking them out to a cabin and torturing them until they admit they're in a cult. No, that's not it at all. It is simply, as he puts it, to be involved in helping group members think for themselves and make their own decisions. And you'd be surprised how successful this is once you get people get out of that control, that community of control where they're not allowed to speak with their friends or offer dissent or disagree. Get away from their family support systems, all that. Just get him out of that for a little bit. His story is he was in a car accident, and the Muunies didn't want to pay for his hospital bills, so they sent him home. And once he was away, he started thinking for himself again. Nobody wants to be in a cult. Being in a cult is more of a boiling frog situation. Mind control is the boiling water that slowly overtakes someone without them ever being aware it's even happened. Yet Hassan says, I've come to believe that human beings are all born with an authentic self. All human beings are born with an authentic self, and that authentic self doesn't go away. It's still there, always in the background. It just needs to be recovered and rediscovered. As well as a desire for love and fairness and truth and meaning. It is something that no group can program out of a person, and therefore there is always hope for real healing. That's our role now. That's our role. That's why we're still here as religious liberals, to remain true to our commitment to individual worth and dignity, and to maintaining communities where people are free to think and express themselves, and to promoting that same for the entire world. The UUA has become a mind control cult, but we remain free thinkers. And our congregations, many of them remain autonomous from any church authority. Because of our continued presence in the world, we will be here to help others think for themselves and to make their own decisions. Should they escape the clutches of mind control, whether it's by leaving the UUA or waking up from other cults, be they religious, political, or secular, or caught in the cult of one person, a malignant narcissist. God knows there's enough of them out there who've overtaken their ability to think and act for themselves. It doesn't take much to understand that the whole world is at war right now over which idea will dominate. I didn't say which ideas will dominate. I said which idea will dominate. Because when we isolate ourselves into various ideological groups, we want our idea to dominate, and anybody who differs with us becomes a threat. That's the world we live in, mostly right now. Rather than realizing that there can never be just one dominant idea, and that to find peace we have to tolerate, at least tolerate, maybe even learn from our differences. That's what liberalism is all about, and that's why we're here, to uplift our common humanity and human dignity and individual dignity by fostering freedom and reason and tolerance so that all of us can become our best selves. Thank you. Thank you.
Please stand, join me for number 326, Let All the Beauty We Have Known. Let all the beauty we have known illuminate hearts and minds, rejoice in wonders daily shown, in faith and joy and love that binds. We celebrate with singing hearts the loveliness of sky and earth, the inspiration of the arts, the miracle of every birth. Life's music and its poetry surround and bless us through our days. For these we sing in harmony, together giving thanks and praise.
For the benediction, the words of Abhijit Naskar, who is the author of The Art of Neuroscience and Everything. Abandon the ceremonies and become an awakened soul, a soul that sees no color but the color of joy, no religion but the religion of love, no language but the language of compassion. Become compassionate, my friend. Become brave, my friend. That is true religion. There is nothing else. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.